Like a good luck charm for a soldier heading off into battle, I carried a stone in my pocket, something I found in Seattle. It vaguely resembled a face, and it looked like a headstone a little. Deep grooves from a wormer from years underwater, heading right down the middle. Some people name their cars or their guitars. Some things are too fragile to name. Some people live for the spotlight. Some live at the edge of the frame, just a few days above surface, a lifetime below. Rocks in my pockets when I go. Stuck to the shoreline in the light of a torch, wrapped up in your bandage like a package on the porch. You were never gonna make it, I felt like you knew, but at least you'll have someone. For some of us that won't be true. Some people go down swinging, get in a few punches. Some learn to ride the currents, some never learn. Probably not gonna leave the slightest trace in the wake. When it's my turn, tie down the sails. When the crosswinds blow, rocks in my pockets when I go. Initials in the bark of a tree, little signs of hope, like a good luck charm for a soldier, mailed home in an envelope. Some people go it alone, some need a friend. The weak ones get lucky, the strong ones stick around to see the end. Just a few days above surface, a lifetime below. Rocks in my pockets when I go. Rocks in my pockets when I go. Rocks in my pockets when I go. Thank you.
Recorded live from the stage in Philadelphia, it's the Mountain Goats with Rocks in My Pockets. It's from their new studio album, Through This Fire, across from Peter Balkin. Joining me to talk about it is the longtime founder of the Mountain Goats, John Darnielle. John, it is an absolute pleasure to meet. Thanks so much for being here today.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm having a good time.
Excellent, excellent. So the new album, there's a lot to unpack with it. It starts with a dream.
That's right.
Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, so I use a little note-taking app, which I'm not shilling, but it's called Bear, and it's really useful to me. They tell you all your life that you're supposed to write your dreams down when you wake up.
Yeah.
If you want to remember them, that's a good process to have. I've resisted this most of my life because every creative writing thing they tell you to do sounds corny to me usually. Like it's so, and I don't keep a diary as a general. Well, these days I do that too. I'm kind of interrogating all my resistance things at this point. But so I had a dream, and I grabbed my phone and I tapped it out, and then I went back to bed. Right. Mm-hmm. And when I woke up, I didn't remember it again, but I opened up Bear to do something else, and there it was, and it said through this fire across from Peter Balkin, making an album. That's the name of the album, right? And the dream was that we were working on an album and that was the title.
Right.
That was it, right? This is not a very interesting dream in a lot of ways.
It didn't reveal the story to you.
No. It was in process. And this is because, I mean, we're working all the time. And I said to myself, wouldn't it be funny if you did that? Lots of my ideas that I go through with start with like, oh, that would be hilarious.
Yeah. So what ended up becoming the story of Peter Balkin and the narrator and Adam,
So
in this
Peter
situation?
Balkin is the captain of a fishing boat, and he's a long-standing. I mean, the way these fishing boats work is they just, this is a lifer job, like being a musician, where you just you go out, you fish, you have your contract, and he's been doing it for a long time, and he's got a crew of 15, and they hit bad weather, and 13 of them die, and 3 of them wash up on shore of you wouldn't really call it an island, it's just a promontory, and it's not a promontory, it's not connected to land, but they wash up someplace and they're not going to be saved. They don't have any instruments, right? Mm-hmm. They forage or whatever. But Peter Balkin hit his head in the churn, and he starts to have visions of the apocalypse and of his own centrality in this thing, and imagining, and he's starving. It's like, there's these people don't have food, and so they sort of form a band about it, but then it becomes clear that he's sick, and the narrator and Adam have to nurse him, through his sort of delirium. Adam wanders off and dies, and that leaves 2, and then Peter Balkin dies, and then the narrator sort of reflects on it a little bit, and then we're over. So it's a very upbeat sort of Christmas album.
Sure, and so when you make a concept record like that, when you tell a story like that, it screams musical. Maybe not necessarily, but
yeah.
I think, but
so
why,
I love musicals is the thing. It's like
did you know this was going to be a musical when you were writing these out chronologically?
Well, so Jenny from Thebes is what I call a fake musical.
Yeah.
It's like, and all of my stuff to some extent or another works how, not all, but much of my stuff from the earliest days works how musical songs work, that they take place within an existing fictive framework.
Yeah.
Right? So when you hear, when you hear 76 trombones, it's not just a song, it's the guy trying to sell the music to River City, right? And trying to sell the band idea to River City. When you hear, For Good at the end of Wicked, right? You are hearing people singing to each other, having gone through something. There's a story that precedes the song, and that enriches the song. My songs are mainly like that, except you don't get the additional data, right? I don't feed you a story. You, as the listener, have to put it together.
Infer what goes on in between those songs.
And to me, that's fun.
Yeah.
That's what I like. Joni Mitchell writes like this too, where like you don't get all the intel. You have to assemble it and participate as a listener, which I like. So I'd done that with Jenny from Thebes with the last one. I had a little dry run. But so yeah, I don't, for staging, who knows? Does somebody make an offer?
If anyone's out there listening, it's available. You might know a guy though. You might know a couple
I know
people.
some guys, but the thing is, for one thing, you're talking about Lin-Manuel Miranda, who's on the album, but he is a friend, and I know that in this business, everybody prevails on their friends for favors, but I would be mortified to ask the guy who lent of his profound talent and vision to my record, can you help me get it staged? To me, that would be crass, and
sure.
So, and I really...
You're not from Hollywood, are you?
I'm not, and I don't. This is like, but it's the music business is like that too. You're supposed to show up at parties and sort of edge your way around. Well, the fact that the Mountain Goats took 20 odd years for people to hear of us is testament to the fact that I don't want to do that. I would consider it. The friendships you make along the way, the creative partnerships you engage in are much more important than the potential fame or money benefit that might accrue to you.
100%. Right? The next deal doesn't necessarily mean anything in the long scope of things.
But that he was on the album, we've been sharing demos with each other for over a decade, right? And when I started writing this one, I started saying, I'll do this thing, and he's a very supportive person, and he would say, this is a good one. I remember the day I wrote Armies of the Lord, I said it to him. I said, caught one. And he said, you landed a whopper. And it feels really good when you share with fellow artists, and so.
You can't not, if a guy who has one of the biggest Broadway phenomena, Hamilton, in his repertoire, and he's singing backing vocals on 4 tracks on your album. I can't envision that going, big picture wise, how's this looking? Because I would be feeding him every day that stuff.
It's so, I mean, to me, like, he's the guy who wrote You'll Be Back, which is just a masterpiece. This is on Hamilton, right? It's the one that King George sings. Do you know this tune?
This is one where I embarrass myself and go, if it's
You
past
say,
Oklahoma.
the price of my love's not a price that you're willing to pay. You cry. Oh, what's the next line? The sea.
Someone from the control room is yelling the lyrics.
Are they? When you see me go by, why so sad? Remember we made an arrangement when you went away. Now you're making me mad. Remember, despite our estrangement, I'm your man. You'll be back. Time will tell. You'll remember that I served you well. Right. This is great songwriting.
Gorgeous.
This is astonishing songwriting. And people have all kinds of opinions about anything that gets really big in the culture, and they want to talk all meta about it. And to me, it's like, no, that's an ABBA song. That's the level that song is on. Is you hear it once. When I listen, I will regret singing that song to you because it will be running around on a loop in my head for the next 5 days, right? Because it's just like Dancing Queen level of greatness, right? And so sharing the creative journey in that way is so great. And I was like, this is a Broadway-ish record, and so we hollered at him, and he came up for the day. We were in Hurley, New York, and at Jerry Murata's studio, Dreamland, and sang on 4 songs. It was amazing.
That's really cool. If you're just joining us on World Cafe, John Darnielle is here. The Mountain Goats' new album is called Through This Fire, across from Peter Balkin. More about the musical and John's new book in a bit, but first I want to get into this song. This song fired me up. Dawn of Revelation. I mean, I think it's Tommy Stinson from The Replacements playing bass. You got Bonnie Light Horseman's Josh Kaufman.
Yeah, ripping a solo on this one. Yeah.
Maybe you were playing the vibra-slap, but this song takes off. I would love to know a little bit about where we're at in the story and the mood that you created with this song.
So in the story, this is where Peter Balkin is sort of announcing his insanity to his 2 surviving crewmates.
Okay.
Like, he's announcing his vision of the apocalypse, his centrality in the, when the apocalypse happens, presumably a bunch of people disappear from Earth, right? And but every apocalyptic prophet has his own version of that, right? Mm-hmm. And his isn't especially coherent, but it centers around them being the 3 people who will lead whoever's left on Earth to safety and prosperity, right? And the big line in it is, no one here is going to die alone, which is like, this is the nature of prophecy, that it sort of has to err. And of course, if you have 3 people and they're all going to die, unless they all die at the same moment, somebody's going to die alone, in fact. And so that's the sort of desperate irony of the song.
Let's take a listen to it from the new album. Here is Dawn of Revelation from the Mountain Goats on World Cafe. Dawn of Revelation here on World Cafe. John Darnielle is my guest. The Mountain Goats have a new album called Through This Fire, across from Peter Balkin. So you talked about how your last album was a fake musical. What actually goes into the logistics of making what you consider like a real, honest to goodness, go for it?
Well, you have to have a book. You have to have a script. It's like, this is also a fake musical, right? It's not being produced or anything. It's like, you have to have a musical is a big collaboration between the people writing, unless it's like, there are people who just do the whole thing themselves. I mean, that's what Hamilton is. But I just write a bunch of songs that exist within a fictive universe, and imagine it in a sort of a musical setting.
If you imagine it as a musical, say, versus a traditional album, does that affect instrumentation? And
yes.
Because that's kind of, I think it's less about the sort of lyrical aspect of it and more like, how do you make it sound like this is, this could be on Broadway?
It needs to have an arc. Songs. It needs to have, so this is a funny thing in Broadway stuff, is that a lot of musicals are including Wicked, are kind of notorious for like the first act is front loaded with bangers.
Yeah,
right?
you want the hits.
And then the second one is like, well, that's fine. That's pretty good. Remember the good one from the, it's like, and then to me in the second act of Wicked, For Good is really good, but otherwise it's fairly thin on the ground. I'm sorry for any giant Wicked fans, but after Defying Gravity, you have sort of peaked, right?
Right.
Which is masterpiece. So if you're writing it this way, like one thing I was really excited about, I saw Merrily We Roll Along, which was revived in New York, which is a Sondheim musical that bombed in the 70s.
I'm not familiar with that.
So it bombed, and it dissolved a partnership, for a while. It was a huge disappointment, but it's not bad actually. It's like there's a lot of reasons why things don't succeed, and so it was revived, starring Lindsay Mendez and Jonathan Groff, who played King George in Hamilton, and I love them still this way. Daniel Radcliffe, is that his name?
From Harry Potter?
So when I saw this play, I saw it with Ada Calhoun, who's an author and a friend of mine. And when Radcliffe comes on, she says, "So that's Daniel Radcliffe." I said, "Well, what does he do?" And she said, "Harry Potter." I haven't seen it at Harry Potter. I haven't seen anything. If it was a visual medium, I probably didn't see it. So I had no idea who he was. But I was like, this guy's really good. Very good actor. Because the thing is, I'm sure he's fine in movies. I've never seen any of those.
But he's a good
on stage, he is magic. He's incredibly good at being on stage. And to me, theater is special, and they had incredible chemistry, the three of them, because it's only a 3-person play. It's like there's a couple of other people who walk on and off, but it's mainly Mendez and Groff and Radcliffe. And but the thing is, where I'm coming back to what you asked about, it opened with an overture, an instrumental overture. You sit down and you see the orchestras in a glass box up there playing Sondheim, right? So it's jazz informed, but it's not jazz, but it's got a lot real cool extensions, major 7s and 9s, very sort of goes into these wistful pockets, but it's got a lot of momentum. I mean, Sondheim is the greatest of all time, and so it's beautiful. And I was listening to that, and I forget if I'd start writing the album or not, but when I did start writing the album, I said to Matt Douglas, I want an overture. I want to do the thing. I want there to be a musical. I want the first track to be something that presents all the major melodic themes of the record. So you hear in the overture that we have, you hear the main melody from Through This Fire, you hear the main melody from Dawn of Revelation, and you hear several, right? You hear a bunch of them, and they're all worked in there. Worcester's drumming on the overture is so astonishing. It's like when he finally drops into the straight 4 at the end, it's one of the most exciting things. So that's one of the things, despite the fact I don't play on it, and it's assembled from my parts, it's one of the proudest things I've ever done, for me.
Let's listen to a little bit of Overture from the album here on World Cafe. World Cafe. John Darnielle is my guest. The new album is available now. It is called Through This Fire, Across from Peter Balkan. So how do you stick the landing with a song like Broken to begin with?
So that actually, that's the listener has to tell me whether that happens, because that's a major anxiety-inducing thing if you're trying to actually, like, we don't normally say this will be the last song on the album. You record the album and you listen to it and you sequence it and you say, well, this sounds like the way to go. I thought about how the storyline begins with people who are shipwrecked on a place where there is no food or hope of rescue, right? So that's what I thought. It's like, this was a no hope situation from the second it happened, right? Like everybody, like in when Hank Schrader in the second to last episode of Breaking Bad is on the ground.
He's going to die.
And somebody starts saying, I think Walter White starts saying, Hank, tell them it'll be okay and they'll let you go. And he looks up at Jack and says, "No, this was already over the second he saw me." I forget what the line he says. He says, there are no options here, actually, which to me, that ties into a long-standing obsession of mine with Greek tragedy and what I wrote my senior thesis about in college, which is that in Greek tragedy, there's a thing that was already going to happen. And all the people in the play are laboring under the illusion that there's any other way that it's going to turn out. Right?
Like the hand of the fates?
Well, it's not fate. It's I mean, they use the word, but it's because the machine of tragedy is working, right? And so any resistance is going to play into the end. There aren't any choices. When Oedipus meets the oracle on the road, right? The oracle's not saying, well, here's the thing that's going to happen if you don't do right. The oracle's saying, here's the thing that is going to happen. and that's what Broken to Begin With is. It's a reflection by the final surviving speaker that there wasn't any prayer, actually.
Let's take a listen to it. It's the Mountain Goats live on World Cafe.
Men of old who sailed the seas, bringing nations to their knees, could come across the remnants of our campsite and never know it kept 3 people warm at night. Survey the flimsy architecture, idly make a few conjectures, scribble some conclusions in a ledger, never knowing better. Like anything you ever come across, before you knew about it, it got lost. It was broken to begin with. It was broken to begin with. It was like this when we got here. It was broken to begin with. When the archaeologists arrived, no proof that we were ever here alive. Me and Peter Balkin and you, friend, until the dream ran out of oxygen. Is this not what you wanted from the sea? Is this not what the waves require of me? Isn't this what we suspect we'll see on the day we finally get free? And if that day turns out to be today, maybe that's okay. It was broken to begin with. It was broken to begin with. It was like this when we got here. It was like that when we got here. It was broken to begin with.
Thank you.
Recorded live in Philadelphia, it is the Mountain Goats, Broken to Begin With. It's from the band's new album, Through This Fire, across from Peter Balkin. John Darnielle is my guest, who also is a 3-time novelist and has a new book called This Year, 365 Songs Annotated, a Book of Days. I know this book was several years in the making.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how it evolved to what it became.
So this is inside baseball stuff that probably is like, runs counter to people's ideas of inspiration. But my agent pitched this idea to me, right? Because I have a resistance to revisiting old work in any way.
Yeah.
I like revisiting it in the context of a live set. I love to take an old song and see where it goes. But but I'm not into sort of, raising my hand and say, remember this thing that you liked, the song this year, right? And so I don't like to do that. And but it was during lockdown, and there was no guarantee that anybody was ever going to tour again. It's like we didn't. It was a very intense time for everybody who worked in public-facing stuff, and especially for musicians. And Chris Perislam, my agent, said, hey, I had this idea. It's like we could. You want to do a lyrics book? A lot of people do that. And I said, yeah, no, I know, because I judge them, right? It's like harshly. If you publish a book of your lyrics, when I could just go online and look up your lyrics, why do I have to buy your book?
You got to make a reason for me to want it.
No, if I'm making a book, I worship books.
Yeah.
I mean, my first ambition was to write a book. And so if I'm making a book, it's extraordinarily important to me that it be worth the reader's time, right? That the reader come to it expecting, even whatever expectations they have, it's important that I both exceed them and confound them in some way, right? So I really want them to have the process of reading a book, right? And so I wasn't quite sure what to do, but he pitched this. I was like, yeah, sounds okay. Why not? As I said a little earlier, I'm at a stage in my life where a lot of my biases, I want to interrogate them. I want to ask, here's a thing you always say no to.
Oh, yeah.
Try saying yes, right? And so I did that. And I said, and the idea was a complete lyrics. And it was about 2 years ago. Chris got the idea in 2020, and 2 years ago, after having done a lot of work on the collected idea of all of them, I got the idea to do 365 of them. And I couldn't believe, I called everybody in my business, say, I've got the title, check it out, check this out. I was
It's like a revelation,
I was
man.
preening. I was like insufferable. It's like just, hey, are you awake? Are you awake? Check it out. It's called This Year.
Perfect.
And then for a long time, there was going to be an appendix with the rest of the lyrics, and I hired a research assistant to get all those together, but it felt performative in a way that I didn't like, just have all these other ones that, without commentary, that would necessarily have to be in small type. They have a giant brick of a book at that point. And so me and Sean, my editor, had some back and forth about that, because he was pretty attached to the idea of it being all of them. But I think it works better as a book, and the book is primary in my thinking of things.
There's always volume 2 down the road if you want it.
Well,
okay, I know. Okay, maybe not.
Took me 4 or 5 years.
Sure, no, totally. Okay, so there was a time where you thought lyrics weren't meant for the page.
That's right.
And I shouldn't get you started on it, but I'm going to get you started on it just a little bit.
All right. You say just a little bit, but somebody get my man a glass of water. So poetry, writing generally doesn't become writing the way we think of it until literacy takes hold, right? Prior to that, did we have poetry? Yes, we did, right? Oral tradition for many, many, many years, right? And poetry, even when literacy begins to rise, the way poetry would have been understood is that there's a guy who sits across from you and says, "What we gardenia in your deum," right? He's memorized the poem. That's the first line of Beowulf, right? I probably pronounced it poorly, but it means we were Danes in days of yore, I think. But that was the job of the poet, was to remember the poems that he had learned from the poets who went before him or her, and to perform them for other people. It was music. Right? It might have been accompanied by instruments or not, right? But that's what it was. Poetry lives in the air. That's the line that I say a lot, right? Now, I don't think this is true of modern poetry. I think most modern poetry is written for the page. And there's a lot of really fun and interesting work done on what happens if the way I'm reading is with my mouth closed. But silent reading does not become a thing for hundreds of years after reading. Everybody was reading aloud when reading was new. You would stand at your text and you would say, Juan the Rapper with its shore sota, the Dracht of March has persid to the rota, and so forth. It wasn't silent.
People wouldn't be reading this on their own in quiet.
No. Wow. You read aloud. Because that's where it is alive. Now, we do a different thing now that is also interesting and cool, right? I don't read my novels aloud when I'm reading something, but then I do often stop, if something's really cool, to hear it in the air, because sound is magic. Sound is primal. The first thing you do the second you're born is sing your first note, right?
Yeah.
And you do. It's like, and that's what the sounds of everything are such a part of it. And when you're reading, you have sounds in your head, but they're competing with others. And once you put it out in the air, then it rushes to the front of the line. And so, these are all the thoughts of a young man who has a lot of theories, right? And so,
Sure.
And I liked theories. But I had my other theory of non-imagetic poetry without images, right? I had that didn't get very far, but I liked theories, the manifestos, things like that. And that was one of my big ones when I first started making records. The question, you want a lyric sheet? No, I don't. I want people to hear them. I want them to receive them in the ear and do that work, because it's a different type of work than reading a lyric. I don't want them to read lyrics while they're listening. I want them to be having this experience. It's kind of dictatorial way of being an artist, but yeah, so that was the way I thought of it forever. I didn't have a lyric sheet at all until I think In League with Dragons, and then I let that one have lyrics that are almost illegible. And so which I enjoyed that.
Here, finally, this is what you get.
There you go. Right. So, but the internet meant that my notion of there not being printed lyrics was obviated by
Someone else was going to do it.
If I don't tell you where the line stops, somebody else will do it for me, and they're gonna get it wrong most of the time. Like I don't use a lowercase I use an uppercase I, but all the lyrics.
Oh, wow! So this drives you.
No, I don't care, but at the same time, I'm like, well, if you are wanting to see what it looks like to me,
From your vantage.
you are not seeing that right there. I punctuate a lot of punctuation. Nobody can get my punctuation right because it's a very it's a prosaic part of my process. So I was pretty happy to be able to do some of that. Just sort of, even though I think canons are nonsense, it's like whatever somebody else, well, I hear it with a lowercase I. Hey, you're the listener. You own half of this,
Yeah, half of the experience belongs to you once it's out in the universe.
Even more than half, really, to some extent, although I'm not so radical on interpretive strategies that I think like any reading of a text is valid. I don't think that's true. If if I write a song, you say, well, to me, this song is about my dog. No, I've never met your dog. It's not.
I mean, that's how you interpret it, but that's not what it's about.
You can do that. That's the thing. It's like, that's a fun thing to do with texts, right? But it's not to say that then all readings are of equal weight. I don't think it's true.
Yeah. John Darnielle is here. The Mountain Goats' new album is available now, Through This Fire Across from Peter Balkin. I read the comment, the annotation for this year, which is the song that we're going to close with, the live performance. This one you thought was I don't know if you've told the story before, but to find out that you thought this record was unfinished.
Yeah.
And you were going to add more, and someone convinced you.
Like a rhyme for this year, something like that. The chorus is the same line a couple times. I don't do that much. In the early days, sometimes a song would end with a single line repeated a bunch of times. I was very interested in repetition. But as I grew as a songwriter, I was more interested in formal choruses that have like either an AA rhyme or an ABAB rhyme. Yeah. But it was Peter Hughes, our old bassist, who was like, I said it was a moment of an old friend doing a good read on his friend, because I said, so I think this one's not done yet, but I'll fix the chorus later and get a rhyme. And Peter said, look, I'm not going to tell you how to write your song.
Yeah.
Because I think he suspected that if he said, no, don't do that, I would go, I'm going to do what I want. And so I'm not really that kind of person, but writers tend to get that way. And so he said, look, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I really think, I reacted very strongly to the song just the way it is. I think we're probably done here, but you can do what you want. And I was like,
really good choice of words.
And he was careful about it. And Peter had a heavy investment in those songs. His responses were very important to me as I would send them along. Up the Wolves is as good as it is because Peter really responded strongly to it and wrote a bass line that is a big part of the song. And so yeah.
Let's take a listen to this year. It's the Mountain Goats on World Cafe.
It's Ben Lochran over there on bass. Listen to the engine the drunken haze. I was 17 years young. Hurt my knuckles punching the machines. The taste of Scotch Ridge on my tongue. Yeah. And then Kathy showed up and we hung out, trading swigs from the bottle, all bitter and clean, locking eyes, holding hands, twin high maintenance machines. I am gonna make it through this year if it kills me. I am gonna make it through this year if it kills me. I drove home in the California dust. I could hear the alcohol inside of me hum. Picture the look on my stepfather's face, ready for the bad things to come. I downshifted as I turned into the driveway. The motor screaming out, it was stuck in second gear. The scene ends badly, as you might imagine. In a cavalcade of anger and fear, well, there will be feasting and dancing in Jerusalem next year. I am gonna make it through this year if it kills me. I am gonna make it through this year if it kills me. Thank you. Respect this iconic Norman. We're the Mountain Goat.
Recorded live on World Cafe, Mountain Goats this year. Mountain Goats, new album, new book from John Darnielle. John, thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure entirely mine.
Well, we'll do it again sometime.
See you then.
We're back in a minute with more World Cafe.